Hello, Econ students. This is Mrs. Proctor. We're going to finish up our discussion on market structures today with oligopolies and reasons for market failures. Oligopoly is a kind of a funny word, isn't it? Well, it just is a market structure where there's just a very few large businesses that dominate an industry. A company generally does not raise its price because if they do, others if they do not follow its price increase, then they're going to lose money. They usually compete on a non-price basis, so they differentiate their product, kind of like monopolistic competition. Monopolistic competition, however, has a lot of businesses in that type of market structure. Oligopoly will have only a very few types of businesses in that market structure. So the ones I have listed there are examples. You can also think of like the soft drink industry. You pretty much have Coke and Pepsi and a few other brands. And then the cereal industry, you have Kellogg's, General Mills. There's just a few types of businesses or a few businesses in that market structure. Oligopolies sometimes will have price wars, but if one lowers the price, the others have to lower their price to remain competitive. So they generally don't want to raise their price because a lot of times others will not follow. Oligopolies, a big problem with oligopolies is collusion. And when businesses collude, that just means that they get together and they discuss and coordinate business decisions, and they do it in a way that restricts competition. So they may say, hey, we're just going to take the east side of town, you take the west side of town, and there's no competition then if they're dividing up the territory. Or they may say, okay, let's set the price at this certain rate, and so that's a problem because there's no competition. Collusion's usually short-lived because there's a great temptation to cheat. You might want to lower your price, and when you do that, you'll make a temporary large profit. And a type of collusion is price fixing, and that's just where they agree to set the price, agree to a certain price, and they set their product at that price. In the early 90s, there was collusion among optometrists of all people. The optometrists got together and they agreed not to participate in a vision care network, and that was considered illegal and price fixing. So, redistribution of the market, so there's no competition. And then there was a pharmaceutical company, Hoffman La Roche, that also did some price fixing on vitamins. Probably one of the most famous oligopolies is actually a cartel, and that is where there's a large number of producers who work together to restrict the market. OPEC is a cartel. It's also a oligopoly because it's just a few businesses or countries that dominate that industry. All right, so here are the market structures again. I've got them in a linear fashion this time, going from perfect competition, which is the most competitive, to monopoly, which is the least competitive, and some of their characteristics listed under each one. Both perfect and monopolistic have large numbers of sellers. They both have ease of entry and exit into the market. Perfect has identical products. Monopolistic competition, they differentiate their product somehow. Oligopolies has a small number of sellers. They have identical or differentiated products, and it's difficult to enter. And then your monopoly is just, there's one seller, it's a unique product, and entry is nearly impossible. All right, sometimes markets will fail, and that just means that they don't do what they're supposed to do. There's a reason that they're not doing what they're supposed to do. One reason might be that there's inadequate competition. So we talked about when they might decide to divide up the market in a certain fashion, and when they do that, the market fails because we have shortages of product and we have higher prices. Inadequate Inadequate information is another reason for a market failure, and this just causes resources to be inefficiently allocated because people don't really know how to best use the scarce resources. If they don't have the right information, they're not going to know how to use resources effectively or efficiently. And the last one would be resource immobility, and that would be when you can't get the resources to where they're needed. If you think of like a natural disaster, sometimes that limits the ability for resources to get where they need to be. For example, when Hurricane Katrina went through New Orleans, they had a really hard time rebuilding the city because they had a hard time getting resources to that area for a while. Public goods come about because of market failures. Public goods are things that are collectively used by the general population, and for some reason the market will not supply. They cannot or will not supply. You can think of your highways, national defense, fire department, police department. That's not going to be something that's going to be just a business is going to provide that. They're not going to provide it because they're not going to get anything. They're not going to make a profit, and we all know that businesses are in business to make profits. All right, externalities, those are things that have a side effect that's either harmful or beneficial to a third party, so somebody that's not directly involved. So the example I like to use that I think you can relate to is, let's say you're headed to prom. You're all decked out, you got the date you want, you got the dress or the tux you wanted, parents let you or you decided to rent a limo, you're going with a great group of friends, and they've decided to hold prom this year down at Fox Theater. So you're going to take your limo down to the Fox Theater. So you're in your limo and you're on the 400 and you're on the way to Fox Theater, and there's a horrific accident in front of you. You're not involved, no one you know is involved, but there's an accident that shuts down the 400 and you never make it to prom. That's a negative externality. You didn't do anything wrong. You did all the things you were supposed to do, but there was a harmful side effect from something that went on around you. Okay, so public goods and externalities are failures because there's no cost to the original market. It doesn't reflect changes of the cost. So those are the reasons for market failures. All right, so the last thing I'm going to have you do on oligopolies is to answer the true-false questions, just like you've been doing on all the other market structures. So you'll find a Google form that has these true-false questions, and you just need to answer whether they're true or false. And that is the end of market structures. Don't forget to do your blogging.